Hi, and welcome to the Perfectly Imperfect Duo with Sarie and Lily. And today we are here to talk about the festive season, holidays, and this idea that when we come up to a certain period of time and we've got holidays, it's not always just the festive season, but as that's around the corner, that's what we'll kind of base it on. But that we come up to certain times in the year, it can be similar actually for birthdays and anniversaries and things like that, but that we start to preempt that we might get stressed and overwhelmed. And then we can often translate that into a story of we either like or dislike. Here in the UK, there's often a big divide of people that love Christmas and people that hate Christmas. It's like, polar opposites of people that are like happily decorating their homes from the end of October. As soon as Halloween finishes, that's it. The Christmas trees are going up, and then there's others who just want it over with. And it's that kind of, just like maybe what our thoughts are on that and how we see that. Well, might be interesting actually. Are you a lover or a hater, Lily, of Christmas? I've not asked you that.
Oh, I'm definitely more of a lover. But I think I'm also just kind of neutral. Like sometimes I wish I would get more even though I'm 41, I spent I think there's only been like very few in my life Christmases that I haven't spent with my family and my mom and dad and all my siblings. And my parents decorate, like they just do such a good job that I feel like I haven't.
Well, you don't need to.
Yeah, and so and we usually, because all my siblings were kind of spread out, and so I definitely do the decorating before, so our house can be festive for at least all of December. But right around the actual Christmas time, I'm usually with my family, and so 100% a lover, but not like a laid back.
Laid back lover. I like that. That's
What about you? What about you?
I'm going to call you that from now on. Lily,
Yes,
my
yes.
laid back lover. um, I, I'm similar really in that I'm not like overexcitable, giddy, like, oh my God, it's Christmas, but I do look forward to it and do enjoy aspects of it that actually up until that's probably the last maybe 5 years, but prior to that, I really didn't like it. I wanted it over. And I would look forward to the 2nd of January being a psychological shift for me that it's done and it's over. And thank God for that. I used to have some of my most severe panic attacks, anxiety episodes over Christmas. I just didn't like it at all. And I think I've always had this story in my head that it's not a good time of year for me. And that played out for a long, 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 long time. And even when I had Maya, who's 15 now, I did put on a brave face for her and do the whole Christmas and decorate and presents and get excited. And enjoy seeing her enjoy Christmas. But deep down, I wanted it to be over.
What do you think played into that? I mean, when did you, I guess, see a switch from probably that younger childlike love to thinking this isn't a good season for me? And why, if you could kind of with your hindsight, why did you have more anxiety and panic attacks during that season?
Well, I think because historically, I know why, as in historically when we were younger, like my mum would do everything to make Christmas really nice and special for us. But the reality was that my dad was an alcoholic and he would, he drank a lot all the time, but he would inevitably drink a lot more around Christmas because he had more people, if you like, that would be willing to go to the pub with him at work, or it was just easier for him to be in the pub more often, if you like. And so there were situations where that hypervigilance around him would be more heightened and stronger around Christmas. Things like he would just not turn up for Christmas Day, and however, and sometimes that even happened once where the presents were in the car, and so he created unnecessary strain and stress around that time of year. So I know it kind of started then, but that's no reason for me to then continue that on into adulthood, actually, because that was my experience. But what I did do, and now what would be different about me, is that I had that as a story, and yes, it was something when I look back on it wasn't nice, and it made me not feel good. But actually realizing that then became part of my definition and story around Christmas. And so for many, many years afterwards, even, my dad's been dead for 13 years. It's like, even in that time when he wasn't even on this planet anymore, like I can't still blame him on, not enjoying Christmas. And that's not the reality. But it was, I started to build up probably from about October. The thinking would start with just as simple as, I don't like Christmas. Christmas isn't a good time for me. And I know that the pressure, the panic, the anxiety came from almost me trying to overcompensate and think, I've got to make Christmas great. So I would do dinner at my house for everybody. I would try it. And I just put far too much pressure on myself to do all of those things. And I can remember, one specific Christmas, I was cooking the Christmas dinner on the hob, and I'm sweating, and I can feel the adrenaline, and I can feel the panic building. And I was just like, just get this finished, just get this finished. And I can remember then sitting down at the table and the panic rising so much that I just had to get out of there. So I left everybody at the table with their dinner. And that was me in bed for the rest of the day and the evening, literally with a bucket by my side, pure sickness due to adrenaline. And that's how I would build myself up every single time. And it would start from around October time.
Oh, wow.
So it was definitely a habit, a pattern, and an expectation, really, that I don't like it, I won't like it. And then, anybody that's listening to this that suffers with anxiety will probably relate to this, is that because I then associated panic and anxiety being worse around that time of year, I would then want Christmas out of the way, because in my mind it was like, I want that danger zone out the way. It felt like that was my danger zone for anxiety, if you like.
Yeah.
It was funny actually, because one of the biggest insights I had in my anxiety history, if you like, was when I started to have really bad panics one summer. I'm like, whoa, hang on, this happens at Christmas. How's it happening? I remember being in the garden in the sunshine going, this doesn't feel right. I don't have panic attacks in the summer. I only have them in the winter. But actually, I can laugh about it now, but it made me realize it's not about the winter. It's not about that it's Christmas. It's the pressure, the expectation, and my story and thinking and attachment to the idea of what it actually is.
Yeah. That also makes me think when you had a panic attack in bed or in your bedroom, when before kind of that, where I think sometimes we think, oh, an insight's going to be, I don't know, like the sun shining in a rainbow, but sometimes you can have an insight when it's something
When you're in the
bad,
middle of a panic attack.
when you're in the middle of it, when you realized, oh, wait, this is my safe place. Panic attacks happen outside, just as like, and I think when we realize that, it's kind of like pops that balloon of like, maybe my ideas are wrong, when we kind of see through that illusion, oh, wow, it's not Christmas or anxiety, it's my thinking about it. And also it's the human system that we just have a critical mass of the stressful thinking and a panic attack and all of that. But that's really interesting, because I don't know if I ever had a season where, I know that, and we don't have to go down here. The only thing I would know is my, and this was before I ever had a panic attack. So it was like anxiety before panic and after. It was just like night and day. It was like more like general mild. And then it was like extreme fear for sanity and everything. But I'd always been in school for a long time, because then I was in school and then college and then graduate school. And then I worked as a school psychologist, and I would notice right around the springtime. And sometimes it wouldn't come until I would have like my digestion would always be off, my stomach, and I would find myself searching and doing different diets, not for weight loss per se, but more like, oh, this must be food combination. And that's why I'm going to eliminate this. And then I would think, oh, here I am again in the spring, because things always seem to ramp up in terms of, especially college and grad school, the springtime, the season's almost over. And then as a school psychologist, assessment. So it would be like February, March, all that stuff that I would just be really like debilitated with. I would find it very hard to eat food and, would be looking for all of these things outside of me, but I didn't actually anticipate it. It was more like, oh, this is the spring. So it was kind of a different thing. But when you say that, and I don't know, it was kind of actually comforting in a way, because but I didn't hear it in the same way that I would now. Like I'm more than ramped up with things to do. And I didn't see the connection. Oh, I have a lot of thinking. I'm really shaken up. There's less for me to do. I would bring in all these things to do, which were ultimately not helpful, because then I would just obsess on like, oh, the food combining one was really I'd always dig myself into a weirder, deeper hole because I'd like eliminate all these foods and I kind of just overcomplicate it, which is funny because I see that I do that way, way less.
Mhm.
But I've been really kind of in my head about some business stuff. And I noticed that it's so tricky because it's so sometimes like our thinking is so sneaky and so invisible that like sometimes I still do that. Maybe I need to change up my exercise, or maybe and I'm like, oh gosh, here's this lesson again. Like
Yeah.
it's nothing to do besides realize that I'm innocently kind of stressing myself out with my thinking and just getting shaken up. And there's so much less for me to do.
I think that's also partly what is kind of similar to what people do around the festive period of, like, we start to ramp up this pressure and expectation. And you know what I found really interesting is around COVID time, I had numerous conversations with people who actually said they found Christmas during COVID a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
Because they were like, I didn't have to go here, I didn't have to do this. And for me, it's like, wow. So we don't enjoy something which is effectively supposed to be downtime, time off for us, changing routine, opportunity to enjoy, suddenly becomes stressful and a chore. Why? Because we put expectation and pressure to please everybody, to do as people want us to do. And yet, even in something like a pandemic where we couldn't go out, and I know it was not like that for everybody, and people that absolutely love that time with families and will miss out, but for some people it was an eye-opener to, oh wow, so it's normally stressful, and why?
Yeah, I know. My son, for me, honestly, it it was a challenge having two kids, I think, because my mental well-being and who knows, whatever it was, and everything going on in my marriage and my life, and trying to one, I was like got down, and then two, and then also my son had a lot of digestive issues. And as I said, we always fly to see my family for Christmas. Even though my mom lives here, my mom's from Massachusetts, and it's fun because then we can have like a winter wonderland where there's snow, and my siblings, some of them are in New York, and so we always would go there, and we go there every summer too. But in the winter, it's a much shorter trip, and so it's about like an hour drive from the airport. And in Christmas, also it's so great. We always have a Christmas Eve party where we usually go to, like, now it's my great uncles and all my cousins. I'm one of five. My mom's one of six, so we have a lot going on, and it's usually been really great. But then when my son was little, he had this severe digestive stuff. And so it was like one Thanksgiving, everything was bad. So it was really, really like they didn't know if he had this Hirschsprung's disease, and we'd have to go to all these pediatric gastroenterologist and have to do all these like clean outs, and it was just really messy sometimes. And so it was after Thanksgiving, it was just a disaster. I don't want to gross anyone out listening to the podcast, but I was like, I can't fly to Massachusetts. I can't be on the plane. Yeah, I was like, I cannot. Like, it was, oh God, it was some of it, whatever. So I just decided I can't go. I can't be on the plane. I can't deal with all this stuff. It was so relaxing just to have a Christmas with just my husband and my kids, and like we didn't fly, and because it's short, and the holiday time, and I miss it. Like, I wish so much that I could drive an hour and see everybody. But we actually started where we don't go to Massachusetts in the winter, because then my family, I think it was that year, they had a talk of how they wanted to get together where we'd all go to Mexico and someone could actually like help cook and clean, because there's like about 18 of us, maybe there's 19 of us, with all the kids and the grandparents and the grandkids. And so then a few years after that, we found a place in Mexico that's like a little compound where we all can stay, and there's someone that cooks and cleans, and it just is like, we're not all there and cooking so much and like having the stress. And so we went to Mexico, and even though it's travel, it's just everyone's in a good mood. We sit around the pool. It's very lower stress. And it's a real time.
You've made a really good, valid point there as well, in that just because we've always done something a certain way doesn't mean we can't have a break from that. So again, I think people feel like, oh, well, we always do this, we always go to that person's, or we always do, so I've got to. And it's like we just feel like we get carried away and carried along with this. This is the expectation, this is what we do. And for all you know, it could be something like you said, where clearly when you hadn't all gone there and it was slightly different, even like your mum and dad are clearly like, actually, it's quite good not to have to do all of this. And it's quite, and then you found a new way of coming together with those differences. And I think, you know, it comes down for me to boundaries and saying no. So like now, so I eventually stopped having people over at mine for Christmas Day, and I'm one of 5, and we all had on our own different places, and it was kind of what I needed to do in a way to stop feeling so stressed around that time of year. And now, like, they're all coming to me this Christmas, but it was not anxiety provoking for me, because I'm not going to wait on everybody hand and foot. And like, they wouldn't ask me to, but I would just take that upon myself to do that. And it's like, you know, we'll make dinner and whatever, but it'd be so relaxed, so laid back. And then it's like, if you want pudding, it's in the fridge, help yourself. Like, whatever, you know, it's just like taking that psychological pressure off, that I have to do everything. I have to make sure everyone's having a good time. I have to worry about that person that sat there not speaking. Are they okay? And like, I'm just not interested in any of that.
Yeah, I know. I definitely think my, I'm trying to think, like, just me socializing in general has changed. And so I think whether it's the summertime, because in the summer we get together also with all my family. So it's really, but I used to take my thinking so seriously around all that, because with a lot of people with a big family, I'm sure you know, also because my parents are the ones that are like the heads in a way, you know, and so I'm always like, am I helping out enough with the cooking, with the cleaning? And I'm like the worst cook compared to, because there's people with real culinary skills. My brother-in-law is an amazing chef. My sister's a baker, you know, I mean, and also a chef, like everybody. And my other sister is also an amazing chef and was a bartender. And so I feel like there's all these people, but so I would have this thing of like, are you cooking enough? Like, are you helping with the cleaning? Are you doing this? Are you helping enough with the kids? And it used to really stress me out, because then I would say the same thing. Are you connecting enough with everybody? Does everybody seem happy? Are you spending enough time with the kids and with the adults? And like, it would be so overwhelming, because I felt like I could never win in terms of spending time with my kids or my nephews or helping with the adults and the cleaning. And I just stopped paying attention to any of that. It doesn't mean that my brain still isn't saying you shouldn't even sit down. And I just realized, oh, that's just, it kind of becomes background noise and I don't pay attention to it as much. So that really carries me over to Thanksgiving and Christmas and the summers. And so I took that pressure off, where I don't have to be perfect. And I guess it's really, for me, what really changed was, you know, I guess I had an insight, because it really seemed really real. Like, it seemed, I'm trying to even explain, there's like the energy, like my stomach would be upset. And it was that like, oh no, am I going to upset people? Are people going to be happy? Am I doing enough? And like, I don't know, suddenly, you know, all of that changed. And so I'm just able to be present and show up perfectly imperfect, because I know, like, I'm never going to win in my brain's mind in terms of like, because that would be like a superhuman. And so then I show up and I do the best I can, like getting good enough presents, you know, because I think probably, you know, like having a big family, trying to think. And so a huge part that I see for myself and for other people is just like lowering our expectations. But I guess I hesitate even saying that, because I think when you think the expectations are like real and meaningful and important, you know, we can take whatever our brain's chatter is as like real and meaningful, and then you can just see it. You naturally lower your expectations, because you see what's really important is just showing up and doing your best and just being present. And then you end up cooking and cleaning and connecting. And then often I think what comes into play with people too, that I know, is when we are putting so much pressure on ourselves and we have so much noise in our head, often that's when symptoms of anxiety can come up. And so it's like, with our best intentions, then we can kind of screw ourselves over, because then we can, as you said, like have to run out of the room, or what if we can't do this? But when we just get to show up, be our perfectly imperfect selves, we're less likely to have symptoms of anxiety. And also, if they do show up, I know for me, I'm so grounded in knowing that all of it's just fleeting and it's temporary. So I can be overwhelmed one moment with the noise, with the lights, with the talking, and I don't have to add on to it with my thinking. I can know anytime I don't feel good. Really, it's just an invitation. Oh, and I just kind of settle down and then it passes, because rather than like freaking out and thinking now the whole night's going to be ruined or the whole day is going to be ruined. And so clear to me in everything, wherever I am, Christmas or Thanksgiving or a sporting event, it's all just energy just coming and going, you know? And so I don't get freaked out also, about all of that. And so, but before I really would, because sometimes during the holidays, we can't control how loud things are, the lights, when we're eating, how hungry, how full. There's all these things that can kind of not set us up, but I'm very, at times, depending on my level of well-being, very impacted by all of that stimulation. And I
Yeah.
used to, again, have all this chatter like, what's wrong with me? And I can't handle this. And I used to be afraid to stay up late. Like my sisters sometimes stay up late wrapping presents. They would wait. And I would be like, I can't stay up late because I could be really anxious the next day. And I would like be so regimented. And now I'm like, whatever, I can handle anything. Like, all right, if I'm tired and if I drank or if it's loud.
Yeah, it's about, yeah, see, because even a noise, the same level of noise can feel less loud sometimes depending on where our state of mind is. Like a really loud noise, it can feel really irritating, like, oh my God. Now I remember when I used to have, when I went through a period of having constant panic attacks, I could only have the TV volume on like 1 or 2 because the noise of the TV was like, oh my goodness, it went straight through me, just like because of it was that, like you say, that overstimulation. It's funny when you were saying that, when you said about rapping your sisters, I couldn't get the thought out of my head. I thought you were going to say they were like rapping, going, yeah, did it like just like literally doing a rap with each other, and then realize you weren't rapping presents. Yeah, it is. It's that. This is a bit controversial, really, and people might even see this as arrogant. But if I start to feel anxious around this time of year, I ask myself the question, what's in this for me? Because if there's absolutely nothing in it for me, and I'm not saying like I'm only going to buy my children presents or make it special for them if there's something in it for me, I don't mean that, but there has to be something in it for us, and that might just be time for doing nothing. Or so again, years ago I would have people around to the house earlier and it would feel like, oh, it's all day and it just feels like, get me to the afternoon and then it's over. Whereas now I'd say, right, don't come until this time. And I might even say, and I want to kick you all out by this time. And it's like, you can't say that. It's like, yes, you can. You can have a boundary that feels like enough for you. If I know that probably by a certain time I'm going to be a bit overstimulated and want my own space, why can't I have that? And this is where people will so often say, oh, I just can't, because they just expect this, and it's like, that's what's going to create and make us feel anxious, is this whole, well, we feel trapped in our own experience, don't we?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where if we actually had an open and honest conversation, probably with our friends and family, people would be like, oh my God, I had no idea you felt this way. And and so we don't even have to have an honest conversation. Also, we can just decide, come at 5 or whatever. I remember when my friend Tina, we were hanging out. It was like a new friend. She was a new friend at the time. And she said, I have about like 45 minutes to an hour bandwidth. Like I'm just, and she said, my friend Rose taught me that I could, and I was like, you can set time limits on hanging out with friends. Cause I had a lot of friends and I love them, but we'd get together and you would never say it's going to be this time. It was like, or I thought it was, and it definitely had to be at least like 2 hours. It couldn't be. And it's so funny now because that was a while ago, at least 10 years ago or something, I think it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. It just like
Please
opened it up.
yourself. You can really please yourself.
Yeah. And and say, oh, I have about an hour. And sometimes you don't, you can just even know it in your mind, but it was really, yeah, like you can set your boundaries.
But we can change them as well, can't we? If
Yeah.
everybody feels, so if you say, oh, right, finishes at 6 o'clock and then everyone's there and you're having a great time, say, oh, don't worry about it. Like, let's carry on for a bit or whatever. But it's about if you're then confident or feeling or valuing your own needs enough to be able to then, if it gets to 8 o'clock, say, I'm actually really tired now, you know, I think we'll call it a day. Or but people are like, oh, it's like somehow that's an uncomfortable way to be, when actually why is it? Because it's not just about pleasing everybody else. It's important that we are also feeling happy in how it looks for us as well.
Yeah. Really, and that's the most important part too, because also when we are, if there are parents watching too, we're setting an example for our kids of like, you know, moving to the beat of our own drum, changing it up. All right, just because I always had everybody over for 9 hours, now it's the season where it feels good and it's a shorter thing, you know, and also it can change, you know, where we're never stuck. And when we have more bandwidth, we can change it up. Like we're free. And I think a lot of it is we make up all these stories, you know, well, it's like our imagination goes wild and we kind of think it's reality when, oh, it's just this story that we're creating about how the holiday is going to be or how it has to go or all this pressure. When it boils down to it, I guess it's just simpler, you know.
I shared a post on Instagram today, which a few people have replied to my story of, like, sometimes you can tell when a certain thing you say hits home with a lot of people. And this was one of them. And it just said, if the beginning of your, what did I say? Hang on, I'll tell you now. Something like, if the beginning of your, I can't even remember what I wrote because I wrote it a while ago. Let's have a look. Here it is. When your thoughts begin with a what if, that is in fact telling you that the following part is an illusion. And,
Yeah.
you know, when we start to try and put boundaries in, or when we start to consider what's right for us, it will often be followed with a what if, or what will people think? What if that upsets people? What if they're not happy? That is all an illusion.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Well, it's our imagination, you know. And I remember hearing George Pransky talk about imagination, and it's our thinking outside the moment, anything that's outside the moment. And if it's worry, it just lowers our spirits, you know. And when we can see that we're free to use our imagination in any way, because it's all making up stories. I have a woman who I just talked to yesterday, and she's pregnant with her fourth child. And I believe she's had C-sections. And sometimes she notices that her what ifs are, what if all the negative stuff that, you know, could happen, the toughness of having a new baby. And then she realized that she said, I could just let the positive what ifs come. And it's not like, no, I'm going to think positively. But when we realize we're making it all up, we could just stop and let room for new thoughts pop up, like something fresh and new that might feel new and different. Like, why would we give all this energy to all the worst case scenario things? And sometimes we don't, when we realize it's imagination, then it can just, or an illusion imagination, just let it go and we just move on to other things.
I talked about an example of this quite often. You might have heard me say it, Lily, but I know I've talked about it in the membership a lot. But I remember it wasn't even that long ago, in the last couple of years, driving in the car with Maya, and she was looking at, she had a playlist of songs, and she was just looking at some stuff on this list, and one of the songs had something about heart attack in it. She went, oh no, you know, I've seen that. It's like, imagine if, like, when we see things like that, it's like, what if it's a sign? What if it means someone's going to have a heart attack? And she, like, wasn't really stressed about it, but it was just like an interesting point to make. And I said to her, if you'd have seen a song in that list that said lottery winner, would you have gone into the same level of thinking? And the answer was no. And it's a point of what you've just been saying then, is like, we could do that with a lottery win, imagine what that might be good, or what that might be beneficial to us, and all of that stuff. But we don't tend to do that. We tend to hang on to the things that we perceive as a problem, or that might be something that might trip us up or might be terrible, that we need to prepare for and plan for. It's like, oh, we don't need to prepare for the good stuff because we'll handle that just fine because it's good stuff. And that's forgetting that we also handle the bad stuff just fine too. And we don't need to plan or prepare for that either. But I just thought it was such an interesting observation with her, we have some good chats in the car, actually. We seem to
Wow.
find things in the car. We had another one the other day where just driving along, and I saw a cloud and it had like a weird shape in it that looked like an alligator. I said, "Oh, Mia, look, that looks like an alligator." And she looked, she went, "It looks like a cat breathing fire." And then I'm driving, so I'm looking away and I look again and it looks like a person's face. And I'm like, and within about 2 minutes, this cloud had looked like 10 different things to us in just a split second. And then it was, again, it was an interesting conversation around, wow, even a cloud is experienced differently through our thinking from moment to moment, second to second.
Yeah. Those are some great examples. It's so true because I think of that when I work with a lot of people with intrusive thoughts or they feel maybe triggered by they see something or health anxiety, and exactly just as you said, but we never think like, oh, you saw somebody. Made me think of that it's like a holiday movie where there's two famous actresses like and it's called like The Swap or something, and they like swap lives and homes. We're never like, oh, what if that happens to
Yeah,
me?
well, what goes to
Like,
LA? Is it The Holiday? It's called. It's a great
yeah,
film.
The Holiday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so
We
we're
don't
not
watch
like,
great movies and go, "Oh, that could happen to me." Whereas, if we watched a movie about somebody dying, we'd go, "Oh,
yeah,
that might be me. I might die of that." It's like
I
so,
know.
you know.
But when we can know, sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't bother me at all. Like but kind of talking about our state of mind, because there was a time, I can't remember, many months ago, maybe last year or something. My boyfriend was out of town and I went to watch something on TV or something. And I think my state of mind was just a bit lower because so I'm finding nothing's good. And then it was the one movie and the husband or the wife died. And I was like, I'm not really in the state of mind I think I started it and I was like, because I think he had just traveled and it was just, and then I found another one and it was also death or something. And it was him. And I was like, are these signs? Like, I can't. And
Is
I just
somebody
had to,
trying to tell me something?
but I knew, I say that, but in terms of the energy that came, I knew it wasn't a sign, but I also knew, oh, my state of mind, I'm, I'm not really up for watching these movies
Yeah, and it's
today. And I
fine to
just read
opt
a book.
out. Yeah, and it's fine to
Yeah.
opt out of that, isn't it? Like, even though we know that's outside in, therefore that's not how it works. It's like that movie didn't actually have the ability to make you feel anything. But if you recognize that your thinking is a little bit contaminated, your state of mind and mood is lower, then why not just take care of yourself and opt out of it?
I know. And I think that's a good point because I think a lot of people, when they're also kind of healing their anxiety and depending on where they're at in their journeys and the kind of school of thought or whatever they're doing to help heal, sometimes it's like you have to push yourself. If you don't do it, and especially people that might be doing something different than what you and I talk about in terms of like exposures, and they feel like, well, I have to go to every holiday party and I have to push myself and I have to do this, when we don't win any prizes for doing it the hard way. And when our state of mind is pretty good, we can handle any movie, we can handle any drive, we can handle any party. But it's also just part of being a human that sometimes your thinking is contaminated, as you said, or like your state of mind's not so great. And the kind thing might be, I'm not going to my holiday Christmas party. It doesn't mean that you're going to be
You've not
having,
failed. You've not.
yeah,
It's not a judge. I was chatting with a client yesterday, and we were laughing a little bit about it because I was like, "Don't make everything like a Bush Tucker trial." And if you've seen I'm a Celebrity, it's like everything's like a test and have I, how many stars have I collected? Have I failed? Have I not? It's like we've got full permission to take that pressure off. And actually, this kind of brings us back full circle to the beginning. Is that, if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed with even the idea of the holidays, feel free to opt out of parts of that.
yeah. Often because when we give ourselves permission, we just quiet our mind. And then sometimes we actually have the bandwidth to take it on. We might think, oh, I'm good.
Absolutely.
But I loved when you said the phrase until now, and you really talked so much and really taught me about letting things be fresh and new. And so each moment, each minute, but also each day, each hour, where you might opt out of a holiday thing in the morning or the afternoon, and it's not like this whole holiday season. It's also totally fine to give yourself permission wherever you're at to say, no, this holiday season, but then to let each thing be fresh and new, because really, I think that's one thing that's been a huge change for me is if I felt anxious in the morning or anything, it'd be like, oh my God, it's going to be an anxious day or it's going to be an anxious week. Like I just made it such a bigger deal. And now I so know I'm open to my mood
Mhm.
changing at any moment. Like things not in like oh, I have to change it, but like um but I've
Yeah,
really taken the pressure off myself too in terms of like when kind of about this, you'll see, like when I was really, really struggling, I gave myself permission at one point not to do certain sports for my kids if they involved like I would do some, but sometimes if it was like driving so far, I knew, and this was before I came into the principles, but I still had wisdom and common sense. Like there was one I just knew I couldn't be able to be the mom that I wanted to be. I mean, it would have really taxed me. And now I'm in a much better place mentally. And my son wants to do rugby as I was before we started recording. And it's his dad is like, it's too far because it's a lot of driving and then the games are all over. And I didn't have the bandwidth, to do this years ago. I definitely would not have been a great thing for my mental well-being. Now it's fine. Like, do I look forward to, we didn't get home until like 7:30 and I just wait and then, but I can handle it, And so I'm there's some things that I get so excited to do now that might seem taxing to other people, but I never could have handled this, 4 years ago. And now I'm like, oh, I can, and so just to know that like we continue to change and we continue to heal and that kindness doesn't have to look like anything we think it looks like, that it looks like for somebody else.
And it's acceptance of ourselves, isn't it? And it's like, say that about so many things. Like people say, how do I stop being agoraphobic? How do I force myself out of the house? Well, the way you force yourself out of the house is to accept that you might stay in the house. It's like be okay with staying in the house. And it's that, it's that acceptance of, okay, it's okay if I don't want to do everything that's expected or asked of me at Christmas. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That makes me a human being who is accepting of myself and doing the best thing by myself. And I think that's often what people will struggle with. I'd love people to share and comment with us. If I don't know if you can comment on podcasts. I don't even know.
I know. Well, maybe we should try to find a way that we could like post the episode on our website, like on the blog or
Yeah,
something.
we'll have a look at how we can do it, because I'd just love to know, because I think, yeah, people's stories and people sharing with us how they feel about the festive season and things like that. Because I think sometimes what we would see, so say if we asked 100 people to comment on our podcast, we would have such a mix of opinions on Christmas is great, Christmas is fun, exciting, Christmas is terrible, Christmas is stressful, Christmas is awful. And that in itself speaks volumes. Because if Christmas had the ability, or the festive season had the ability to make us feel terrible, then we would all be feeling terrible. And we don't. Because it's our perception, our expectation, the stories that we carry through, which, and I can't even remember the point where I stopped buying into that story of my history. It's like, that was my history. This doesn't, and it was almost like, I can't even remember the moment, but it was like, kind of quite subtly like, oh, I can enjoy it if I want to. I can have a different experience of it if I want to. And every second from now onwards is a new opportunity to see something different.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I hope people do comment and then ask us questions, because I know we are also thinking of doing a Q&A. So if you're listening, because I've had some people recently that have said, oh, I've been loving the podcast. I think you had that too. We're back more regularly. So whether it's about holidays, and I know some people listening might celebrate different holidays, outside of Christmas too. So you can kind of think of this as anything that is a more, festive.
Because this kind of really is the same as talking about anything where our structure changes a little bit, and structure changes and things feel, again, goes back to uncertainty, unknown, unpredictability. It's not as familiar as it was last week, and that can get the cogs turning a little bit, but we don't need to buy into that, and we can give ourselves full permission. And I would urge anyone to ask themselves, what's in it for me? Because that's what I'm asking myself in my preparations for Christmas. What's in it for me? I'm going to make sure.
What is in it for you? What comes up? Yeah, what comes
What is
up
in
for
it
you?
for me? Oh, good food, resting, time with family, being opportunity to be present and not in my head with work. So much in it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same for me. Same for me. I'm really looking forward to it is, I mean, I'm so excited to see my family that I don't get to see all the time, like my sisters and my brothers and all my in-laws and my nephews. And resting. I'm really going to send my brain on holiday and my work brain. Like she's going to stay in California. She's not invited to Mexico. Like I honestly think I might be like not bring my computer. Like that's maybe what I'm going to say. I'm not going to bring my computer. I mean, I
Great.
feel like actually worried to say that, but I'm
You
going to
said
let
it
it sit
now.
with.
You've committed to it. That is your
Okay, should
wisdom.
I do it? Should I do
Yes,
that?
that's your wisdom telling you.
What
You've
am
just
I?
you we know when you said that then, you said it so calmly. You're like, I'm thinking I'm not going to take my computer with me. And I heard your wisdom going, you're not taking your computer. Then your anxious thoughts go, oh, but what if I need it? And what if the world comes to an end? And what if it's like, I heard your wisdom tell you you're not taking your computer, and then you questioned it. So
I
go back
did.
to that knowing was, I
Okay.
don't think I'm going to take my computer. Sounds like a
Well,
bloody great idea.
I didn't think of it until well, my wisdom just came out because I never even
Yes,
had that idea until I said that on this podcast. But hopefully
exactly.
I'll report back onto my note. I need it. I feel very ill with the amount that I've been on my computer. Like literally I was gonna vomit last night at rugby. And I know yeah, my computer will stay in California.
Yes, I love the way that your wisdom just showed up on the podcast in that very moment. You'd not thought about, you'd not, and it just went, oh, just don't take your computer. That was your wisdom. And then you were
It
trying to
really
claw your
was.
way out of it. Oh, God,
Yeah,
I love a bit of wisdom.
it really does. But I feel anxious, but that will be a great thing to report on.
Yes, I can't wait to find out.
I know. That's my lesson that I'm still learning and okay with. You know, when I was actually thinking of this podcast, I'm like, oh, I have no anxiety about the holidays or any travel or even like driving now. I drive all like I'm like, and it's still, I'm learning on how to not take my thinking seriously when it comes to work because I own my own business, or not that there has to be but I'm also okay that I'm only, a little over 2 years into it. And I still trip myself up. I keep falling in the same holes. And I'm also okay. There's so many lessons that I feel like I've learned and wisdom that I have regarding my health, the health of my kids, the safety, like, night and day. And right now I take my thinking seriously when it comes to my business and I look forward to having continued insights, but so for anyone's listening, like I'm still learning, it's nothing to do with an anxiety disorder when it comes to work, but I know that the level of thinking that I have isn't really great for my physical or my mental health. And I'm really open to continued,
And actually, sometimes, I've been doing it another probably 4 years plus than that, and I still do that. So, it's not that you're going to do another 2 years and then suddenly that's going to stop, but it's not necessarily about heightened anxiety. Like when we get rid of that awful, intense, heightened anxiety, we still have to be conscious and reflect on taking care of ourselves in a more general sense.
yeah. And that's where I'm saying that I'm obviously we're never done in a great way. Like
Yeah,
we're
thank goodness.
life shows up and we get to keep learning. And for me, I'm incredibly grateful that I have the knowledge that I have because all I know is it's super simple as leaving my thinking alone, leaving my computer at home,
Hey.
and that's uncomfortable, but that's also okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
this was great.
it was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, so we'll end it there and thank everybody for listening and keep, as ever, sharing with us any suggestions that you have of what else you wanted to talk about because this is something that people had specifically asked for and we will always do our best to deliver what is asked for. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Yes. Happy holidays.
Oh, yeah, happy holidays.